Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 15, The Blurred Events of the Past. So, we must return to that room to take a look. Hung Jun. Li Jinglong furrowed his brow. Everyone looked towards Hung Jun, only to see him subconsciously stand up, walking out of the hall and stopping in the hallway. This was a familiar place, but in his memories, everything was different. Hung Jun looked around at his surroundings and felt that he had recalled a set of memories he never had before. What was going on? Was it due to the Lihun pollen? But didn't the Lihun pollen only have the ability to make someone forget past events? How then did it let him recall the past? Dad! Dad! In his memories, the voice of little Hung Jun shouted loudly and hoarsely as a black shadow flew by, landing in the courtyard. It was Qing Xiang. Hung Jun suddenly turned his head, only to see Qing Xiang of the past. He was wearing a long one-piece robe, and he stepped forward, saying heavily, "You've killed enough, haven't you?" Inside the hall itself, under the bright golden lights, a husband and wife embraced each other in death. Their faces were already blurred beyond recognition, and little Hung Jun leapt towards those corpses, hysterically crying and screaming, but Qing Xiang lifted him by the collar and pulled him back. "Dad!" Little Hung Jun shouted piteously, but Qing Xiang's voice issued from somewhere near his ear. "Shh! Look at me, look at me!" Qing Xiang took a knee and turned Hung Jun towards himself, both of his eyes watching Hung Jun. His mouth trembled faintly as he spoke a sentence to Hung Jun. Little Hung Jun stood dumbly in the yard, gazing at his surroundings, before Qing Xiang forced him to only look at him instead, pressing down gently on his head, speaking to him, but those words had already been blurred beyond recognition. What had Qing Xiang said? Hung Jun's forehead was firmly set in a frown. That sentence was one that Qing Xiang seemed to say a lot, except he had forgotten it. But the exorcism department, and that deceased couple, what was going on there? Hung Jun! Everyone called. Li Jinglong walked out into the courtyard, raising his hand and waving it in front of Hung Jun's face, asking, "Are you all right?" Hung Jun had a nagging feeling that he had forgotten something that Qing Xiang told him, something important, but instead he had remembered even more strange things. He closed his eyes and shook his head in an attempt to clean these messy memories out of his own thoughts. Li Jinglong asked surprisedly, "What's wrong?" Hung Jun breathed in deeply before gesturing that it was nothing to worry about. They returned to the main hall and sat down, and he raised his eyebrows, asking wordlessly about what conclusions they had drawn. "Tonight we move out," Li Jinglong said. "I think I have a sense of what we were doing. We must have found a clue of some sort at Yishilan, but we needed to check again to be sure of what the clue was. Now, everyone should go rest for a bit, we'll gather again at night." Mo Rijin, A Tai, and Chu Yongxi nodded, but none of them moved, all watching Hung Jun. Hung Jun hurried to reassure everyone that he was fine, and they finally dispersed. In the afternoon, just as Hung Jun was lying down, Li Jinglong came by to check on him. He sat on the edge of the bed and asked, "Kong Hung Jun, what happened with you today?" And saying that, Li Jinglong lifted his hand and put it atop Hung Jun's. Hung Jun's heartbeat sped up, and from the depths of his heart came the strange urge to reach out and grasp Li Jinglong's hand in his own as he told him all about those memories just now, but he himself hadn't figured out what was going on with them, so he merely responded, "Not much. If you have worries on your mind, you can tell me whenever you want," Li Jinglong said as he retracted his hand. "If you feel discomfort after smelling the Lihun pollen, we'll need to figure out a workaround quickly." Hung Jun hurried to reassure him that it had nothing to do with the Lihun pollen, and Li Jinglong nodded before turning to leave. Hung Jun rolled over, yawned, and went to sleep. The sun set in the west, and the mountains cast their shadow over Daming Palace. A woman wearing an elaborate outfit strode in the shadow under the outer wall of the palace, moving like a soundless ghost. "I felt it, it's in the city of Chang'an." A black-clothed man with a scar on his forehead stood there silently. "Fei Ao, you go check it out," that woman pressured him. "Give me something to eat," that black-garbed man who had just been called Fei Ao answered impatiently. "There will be food," the woman said heavily. "We must find that fellow. Mara is not yet stable. Give me food." Fei Ao peeled back his lips to reveal sharp teeth. "That's not your food," the woman said as she took a threatening step forward. "Bring him back, then there will naturally be something for you to eat." Her eyes suddenly flashed red. Fei Ao retreated half a step, quieting down for a bit, before he turned and vaulted over the wall, vanishing into the twilight. "Madam!" A maid hurried over, but she didn't see anyone. She softly asked, "Was there anyone else here?" "You." In that instant, that woman turned her head, and the maid let out an ear-piercing shriek. "Help!" The maid tried to shout, but her cry was muffled by a strand of black mist. Her eyes opened wide, staring at the fur-covered face before her attached to the elaborately dressed monster. A giggle rose from its throat as all the skin on the maid's body dried out with a speed faster than what the human eye could follow, and in an instant she became nothing more than a skeletal, shriveled piece of human jerky. With a quiet sound, she plummeted head-first to the floor. That guy Fei, still wearing that set of elaborate clothing, walked towards the light of the sunset as she whistled once to the mountains. A few wild foxes leapt over the wall and picked up the maid's corpse, dragging her out of Daming Palace and tossing her into a mountain valley. "Hung Jun, wake up!" Mo Rijin patted Hung Jun's shoulder. Hung Jun felt that his head was in great pain, but he rolled over and got up. Mo Rijin felt Hung Jun's forehead. He didn't have a fever, so he asked, "Not comfortable? Do you want to sleep a little longer?" Hung Jun had a very long and strange dream but forgot everything when he woke up, so he made a gesture to indicate that it was nothing. By the time they exited the exorcism department, everyone had already made their preparations. Li Jinglong had a bow slung across his back and his sword at his hip, and was currently debriefing everyone. Hung Jun remembered that moment in the afternoon where Li Jinglong had put his hand on Hung Jun's own, and Hung Jun had suddenly felt that he was very dependable, so he shuffled a step closer. Li Jinglong paused for a moment, but when there were other people around he had nothing to say, so he just nodded his head once. The Carpiao was perched on the back of a horse. Both of its legs dangled in the air and its head leaning on Li Jinglong's back as it dozed, its hands drooping down over his shoulders. Let's go." Hung Jun decided to forget the strange events of the afternoon, even though it gave him a vague sense of unease. The drums began to beat again, and the five of them flipped onto their horses. They galloped quickly, and upon arriving just outside of Pingkong, Li, A Tai and Chu Yangxi turned onto the main street while Li Jinglong, Hung Jun, and Mo Rijin made their way into the back alleys. Mo Rijin nodded at the other two before flipping up onto the wall, entering the backyard of Yishi Lan. "Hammurabi and Chu Yangxi are going to go draw the attention of the people in the building," Li Jinglong explained as he put the Carpiao down and saw Hung Jun looking around. "Mo Rijin is in charge of passing messages between our groups, and the two of us will return to that room to investigate again." "Wow, it's so lively," Hung Jun said. This was the first time that Hung Jun had come out after the drums had sounded, and he felt that Chang'an had instantly transformed. Every building in Pingkong Li was filled with light and dancing, and the red lanterns were all lit, casting a red glow over their surroundings as the music resounded through the streets. To his left, the sound of the pipa floated out into the street from Nightingale of the Spring Dawn, like thousands of pearls falling gently onto a large drum. To the right, Yishi Lan was filled with the sounds of over 10 konghao that bubbled ceaselessly like a mountain spring just freed from the confines of the snow. On the two towers above, lengths of red gauze tumbled about, accompanying the occasional shouts of praise from the businessmen and scholars as the proprietresses smiled non-stop. Gazing up to the top of Yishi Lan, every tower was lit with bright lanterns, and behind their curtains was a wealth of gold and Qianfeng emerald decor, while human shadows passed by like silhouettes in a revolving scenic lantern. The phrase "singing and dancing all night long" in these 10 miles of Pingkong was perfect for describing this scenery. What exactly is this area for? Hung Jun finally felt doubt stirring in his heart. Li Jinglong couldn't believe it. Hung Jun didn't even know what an entertainment house was. He couldn't tell if Hung Jun was really as naive as he was pretending to be, so he looked consideringly at Hung Jun in front of him for a moment, and seeing that his face was completely innocent, asked, "You're serious?" Hung Jun. "It's a..." Li Jinglong had a moment of difficulty, before saying, "Well, it's not a good place." Hung Jun asked again, "Last time when I took you to Nightingale of the Spring Dawn, why did they mock you afterwards?" Li Jinglong put his hand on his forehead, indicating that he shouldn't keep asking. The reality was that amongst all the Chang'an officials, who wouldn't come here? It was only an excuse to use him as an example, that's all. But Hung Jun had a curiosity that would smash through clay pots to get to the bottom of things, so he continued, "Have you come here before?" "No," Li Jinglong answered. Just in that moment, a scholar hugging a beautiful woman staggered out from a small alley nearby. He was clearly drunk as he tottered towards the back entrance, and Li Jinglong pulled Hung Jun aside, the two of them hiding in a darker area. Hung Jun couldn't help peek out, as the suspicion in his heart had almost pierced the heavens. Li Jinglong saw that he didn't seem to be acting, and responded straightforwardly, "I don't like." "Don't like what?" Hung Jun turned his head back around. The two of them were standing extremely close, and Li Jinglong stiffly moved back a little to put some space between them. "I don't like these kinds of temporary flings," Li Jinglong replied. Hung Jun read between the lines and could guess at the meaning hidden in those words. Li Jinglong asked, astonished, "Why don't you understand anything? Aside from your parents, didn't that Carpiao ever teach you? Then you tell me." Hung Jun put one hand behind his ear. The more secretive and mysterious something was, the more interesting it became. Li Jinglong. At the same time, at the main entrance to Yishilan. "Hi mi ho bai." A Tai smiled exaggeratedly as he spread his arms wide. He's here again. It's that Hu person. That lute-playing Hu person is here again. Sweetheart babe dash. A Tai lifted the chin of the old proprietress and gently made a kissing motion. The proprietress' face grew very red, and she smiled and said, "Gongzaji is here again. You haven't come for several days now, the girls were all waiting." A Tai smiled, "I didn't have a choice. After I first came, I had to properly make amends with my superior officer. Now that I have some free time, haven't I come by to see you all?" "Ah!" As soon as A Tai walked into the hall proper, the women made their way downstairs and swarmed him with their shrill cries. That scene made all the guests behind the screens irresistibly curious, so they stuck their heads out to look. "Chu Gongza has also come," a woman said. "How about you compose a poem for us? Tell us about your bioj." Chu Yongxi smiled and replied, "Tonight, let's listen to A Tai's lute first." A Tai walked into the hall, and the dancing women all stopped in their movements, parting to let him through. A Tai hugged one of them, planting a gentle kiss on her soft face, before walking alone to the innermost seat in the hall. "Won't you give us some wine?" Chu Yongxi smiled. One of the waiters immediately brought some wine. Tonight in Yishilan, there were many scholars who had come from afar to visit the capital, and seeing that their female companions were all sticking their heads out and peeking, unhappily asked, "What's up with that Hu person?" The women indicated that they shouldn't ask too much, before they once again peeked their heads out beyond the screen to look. Above A Tai's head hung many bright lanterns, and the second and third floors were packed with girls. Behind them, their many confused customers had followed them out to take a look, only to see, under the lamplight, A Tai's head of dark brown curly hair, his eyes as deep and lustrous as the ocean, his high nose bridge and deep-set brows, and his milk-colored skin. He smiled at everyone in the audience. The entire hall hushed as A Tai sat down, crisscrossing his legs. Holding the barbet lute in his arms, without plucking the strings, he cleared his throat and began to sing. How many wild fields used to be gardens filled with blossoming flowers? How many palaces have become desolate ruins? In the pause after the sound of his voice, his 5 fingers strummed the strings of the barbet lute, and the strings resounded one after another. It was like there was a wave of strange energy that flowed out from his fingers, filling the hall and the yard like moonlight. The silver strings let out short, staccato notes, and out of the messy weeds outside a glowing stag made of white light grew. It bounded into the courtyard, filling the entire hall with white flower petals. I am drunk in the depths of your eyes, and I have long forgotten the passage of time. Atai tilted his head very slightly and closed his eyes. That handsome, well-formed profile stole the breath of everyone watching, and all of the doors on the 2nd and 3rd levels were wide open as everyone fell under the spell of the music, lightly traipsing down the stairs to listen. In that moment, the entire building seemed to have fallen into a dreamlike state, and everyone lost themselves in the music. Chu Yangxi's face had a gentle smile on it. With 2 cotton balls stuffed in his ears, he swayed his head gently in time with the music. In the back alley, after Hung Jun heard Li Jinglong's explanation, his entire face turned red, and with mixed excitement and curiosity, he asked, "Really?" Li Jinglong never wanted to repeat what he just said to Hung Jun ever again in his life. "You're not allowed to tell anyone," Li Jinglong commanded. Technically Hung Jun was already 16, and the Great Tang was very open-minded about these matters, so 13 and 14-year-old youths were already considered grown in Chang'an. Seeing them wandering around Pingkong Li was nothing strange. During his time in the Longwu army, Li Jinglong would also let his men discuss such matters with impunity. However, when it came to Hung Jun, he suddenly felt a strange sense of wrongdoing in his heart. "This great of a place, why didn't you come?" Hung Jun asked. "I obviously wouldn't come." Li Jinglong was so enraged by these words that he almost exploded. "Do I seem like that kind of person?" Mo Rijin stuck his head out from the backyard and whistled towards the 2 of them, gesturing for them to come inside. Li Jinglong's expression was stern, and he indicated that Hung Jun should zip his lips, but there wasn't really the need to do so. "Time to get to work." Li Jinglong nudged the Carpiao, saying, "Go stand guard in front of the tower." The 2 people turned and, with rapid steps, ran towards the backyard. The 2nd and 3rd floors were really completely empty. Hung Jun threw out his grappling hook, and with Li Jinglong in tow they flew up to the 2nd floor. Mo Rijin leaned up against the outer wall on the 2nd floor, and he handed Li Jinglong and Hung Jun 2 wads of cotton. Li Jinglong stuffed his pair into his ears, but Hung Jun held his at a complete loss. Li Jinglong walked in front, and Hung Jun took the chance to sneak up next to the railings and peek down at the scene below. The mesmerizing lute sounds traveled up to them as the transfixed occupants of Yishilan remained so captivated they seemed drunk on the music, like wooden puppets fixed in place. "Hung Jun." Atai's voice held traces of moonlight that moved like flowing water, and it curled around the courtyard, but before he could finish his thought, Mo Rijin grabbed Hung Jun's hands, stuffing the cotton balls into his ears. In an instant, the lute melody and the singing faded to a distant hum, and Hung Jun returned to his senses. Li Jinglong was waiting for him in front, and he pulled him into a room, saying quietly, "Don't listen anymore, hurry up and get to work." Mo Rijin guarded the door outside to prevent any more unexpected occurrences. Hung Jun couldn't resist glancing at the doorway again, asking, "That was Atai playing the lute?" Hung Jun could venture a guess that this was probably one of Atai's spells. When they were making music at the exorcism department as usual, he just hadn't used his power against them. Hung Jun sprawled on the floor, looking under the bed, and since Li Jinglong hadn't seen anything strange, he put his sword back and came over to lift up the bed. Gritting his teeth, he asked, "Haven't you heard it before?" "Not like what it was today, found it." Hung Jun found that there was a long cloth bag under the bed, and he hurriedly pulled it out, only to be greeted once again by the head of that dried-up corpse. "Waa!" Hung Jun was so frightened he began to shout, "It's this again!" Mo Rijin knocked on the door outside, and Li Jinglong responded, indicating that he was inside so there would be no trouble. Yi? Why did I say again? Hung Jun muttered to himself. Pull it out, Li Jinglong said. After Hung Jun dragged out that dried corpse, Li Jinglong set the bed down again. This time, Li Jinglong had come prepared, and he pulled on a pair of black silk gloves and began to examine the body. Hung Jun stared at it from the corner of his eye as his entire face grew numb from fear. In the end, he hid behind Li Jinglong. A male between the ages of 30 and 40, Li Jinglong said. Look at these clothes, they're not those of a merchant or a bureaucrat, so he might be a scholar who came to the capital to take the imperial examination. Hung Jun. I don't dare to look. Hung Jun watched Li Jinglong peel the clothes off that dried, blackened corpse, its mouth wide open as it showed the gums. Exposed as it was under the lamplight, it looked unspeakably disgusting, and all his hairs stood up. Li Jinglong said, Don't be afraid, it's not like it can eat you. Look here, what kind of yao sucked him dry? This could not have resulted from the natural processes of decay. Is the Yaogwai the owner of the room? Hung Jun came to a sudden realization, and he began to paw frantically through the cabinets and drawers. Li Jinglong said, Don't randomly touch stuff, we'll be discovered that way. Hung Jun ducked his head into another drawer and answered, If it's a Yaogwai, then there's definitely some sort of artifact or evil object it keeps around it, but there's nothing like that here. Li Jinglong thought deeply for a second as the sounds of the music from downstairs continued. From the outside, Mo Rijin asked, Still not done? After searching thoroughly, Hung Jun answered, There's no Yaogwai in this room. I have a question. Have you felt any Yao energy? Li Jinglong asked. Hung Jun shook his head, and Li Jinglong thought deeply before continuing, The Yao must be in this building. For today's plan to succeed, we can only be a little more daring. Hung Jun, let me borrow your grappling hook. In a bit, you and Mo Rijin should go to the two sides of the building and carefully watch the people gathered in the hall. Have your throwing knives at the ready. I only have 3 throwing knives left. Count on me, I'll definitely bring them back. In the main hall of Yishilan, A Tai strummed his lute, and with the speed of moving clouds and flowing water, it was already time for the usual drunken revelry. The melody rose like the wind and clouds covering up the full moon, and like tens of thousands of leaves in motion, it blanketed the heavens and the earth. I search for you bitterly in this tempest. A Tai's voice resounded throughout the whole building, and just then, there was a hong sound as a dried corpse with a rope tied around its neck fell from an upper floor. Chu Yongxi and A Tai were caught off guard, and both of them startled. Not knowing what had happened, A Tai subconsciously swiveled his head to look towards the second floor. The singing suddenly stopped, and everyone in that hall stared mutely at that dried corpse. A few breaths later, a series of shrill shrieks erupted. Within Yishilan, the old proprietress was so horrified she started screeching wildly, and the customers were temporarily stunned into a stupor. Chaos broke out all throughout the building, and the shrieks rang out here and there as many of the women fainted. And just at this moment, Li Jinglong, Hung Jun, and Mo Rijin watched the customers below from their vantage points on the second floor, only to see one of the women in the corner take a step back as her facial expression changed. In another 2 corners of the hall, 2 other women who were accompanying customers were greatly shocked, both of them shooting glances towards the first woman. Without exchanging any signs, the 3 of them all lifted their eyes and looked up towards the door to Jin Yun's room on the second floor. Just as they moved, 3 throwing knives flew through the air, darting right for them. The women had not yet realized that they had revealed themselves, but they could sense their imminent demise, so with a wave of their hands they shook open the sleeves of their robes, letting out a faint purple light. They didn't expect, however, for the knives to pass right through the purple light, and with fire sprouting off them, bite deep into their shoulders. Follow the knives! Li Jinglong shouted. Don't let them escape! Li Jinglong flipped over the railings, falling towards the hall on the first floor. At this time, the hall was filled with chaos. A Tai packed up his loot, and with Chu Yongxi, they both rushed out. Mo Rijin pushed back against the railings, using his shoulders to open up a door on the second floor. The women near the doors of the hall shouted in agony. The three women each reached out a hand to pull out the throwing knives embedded in their shoulders, but when their hands met the metal they were burned until they shouted in agony. They knew that a master had come, and afraid of engaging him in battle, they instead turned to flee. One of the women, the one with seemingly the highest level of cultivation, turned around as she was climbing out of the window. A ray of fire shot out from her finger, flying out towards the space above everyone's heads in the middle of the hall. Hung Jun was just jumping off the second floor when Li Jinglong suddenly shouted, "Hung Jun, watch out!" Hung Jun whipped his head around and saw the flames flying by. However, its target wasn't him, but rather the dried corpse that dangled in the air. The flames came into contact with the corpse and in that instant turned into a roaring blaze, charring it into ashes. The three women rushed out of the door, and Mo Rijin leapt through a window on the second floor. In midair, he knocked an arrow to his bow, and Shua loosed 3 arrows. One of the women couldn't resist turning her head around to look for their pursuers when she rushed out, feeling nervous otherwise, but with this head turn her neck squarely met the arrow as it shot straight through. With a wang sound, her body was briefly enveloped in a white light, and when the glow faded, in her place was a blue-eyed brown-furred fox with fresh blood spouting out of its wide-open mouth. In close pursuit, the other 2 arrows flew over as well, hitting the abdomen and the leg, ensuring its death. Li Jinglong angrily roared, "You were too harsh. This is your first warning. Where are the other 2? Mo Rijin landed, and with a wave of his hand, the 3 arrows pulled themselves out and returned to their owner as the blood from the fox sprayed in all directions. "I didn't mean to hit its neck." Mo Rijin protested rather helplessly. At this time Hung Jun had rushed up as well. Inside Yushilan, everyone pushed and shoved at each other wildly, everything there had already become an entire mess. Hung Jun waved and the throwing knives returned to his hands. He asked, surprised, "Foxes?" "Fox Yao," Li Jinglong said. "Go track down your throwing knife, quickly." "It's," Hung Jun turned in all 4 directions before saying, "In the alley." "Where's Zhao Zilong?" Li Jinglong said. "Quick, quick! Why do none of you have any teamwork?" The Carpiao pulled out a cloth bag as it waggled its tail and ran over, saying, I'm coming, I'm coming." With 1 foot, Li Jinglong punted the Carpiao into the building, and he, Hung Jun, and Mo Rijin turned to chase the other 2 Fox Yao. End chapter. Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 16, Fox Hunting in the Depth of Night. A Tai and Chu Yongxi had already chased after them. After escaping from Pingkong Li, the 2 women separated and transformed themselves into foxes on the way to the East Market. One plunged into the darkness of the East Market while the other leaped upon the roof and fled southward, just like an arrow that disappeared without a trace in the twinkling of an eye. A Tai and Chu Yongxi came out of the alley when they encountered an urgent break. Li Jinglong, Hung Jun, and Mo Rijin were also chasing after them. Before both of them could speak, Li Jinglong said, "You 2 chase the one on the top. We're going to chase the one below. Quick!" A Tai and Chu Yongxi went up to the roof and chased along. Li Jinglong, along with Hung Jun and Mo Rijin, sprinted towards the deepest part of the East Market. The Carpiao ran inside Yushilan where everyone was still trembling in fear. A customer hurriedly shouted, "Quick! Call the Longwu army who patrols the city." The Carpiao drilled in the crowd and shouted, "Illusions in the smoke. Transient as a fleeting cloud." He took out a silk brocade bag and then scattered the Lihun pollen. In no time, all the people around him began an earth-shattering sneeze. Hatshu! 10,000s of laws being empty. The Carpiao jumped towards the table in the middle of the hall and scattered out the Lihun pollen once again. Hatshu! Then, the Carpiao animatedly bounced off the stairs to the 3rd floor. Shaking off the brocade bag, the carp Yao poured all the remaining Lihun pollen onto the hall. Separated generation by time. Hot shoe. Everyone ate, drank, and had fun. I'm off. The carp Yao drilled out from the window. He searched for Hung Jun and the others and ran away. All was quiet in the East Market with nothing to be seen. Li Jinglong asked in a low voice, "Can you feel the Yao's spirit now?" Hung Jun replied also in a low voice. "It's too far to see. Just now, there was a flash of light." He then pointed somewhere. Origin's eyes were fixed on the darkness. Li Jinglong asked him, "Can you see?" Origin frowned. "No. It's too dark." Origin had excellent eyesight. The arrows on his back were made of refined steel with 7-nailed arrows engraved with runes. When the desert grassland was as high and wide as the culmination, a single arrow could drop thousands of miles of flying birds in the vast sky. However, in this dark East Market, his eyesight couldn't be put into good use. "It's like, there." Hung Jun turned to the other side, his eyes full of doubts. "Zhenshi." Origin patted Li Jinglong's arm and said, "Your sword. Is it shining?" Li Jinglong pulled out the long sword and pointed in Hung Jun's direction. The runes on it subsequently glimmered and lit up. Hung Jun and Origin were both surprised. Li Jinglong held the long sword and turned to another angle. The rays of light grew brighter and then dimmed. "What does it mean?" Hung Jun curiously asked. "The sword can either sense the Yao's spirit or your throwing knife," Li Jinglong responded as he began to move the sword to the left and to the right. The luminous frequency of the sword slowly caught up with his movements and then kept a stable ray of light as he slowly swiveled in a circular sector. "The fox is circling," Li Jinglong said. "Circle the East Market and outflank it." The three men scattered and traced along the three directions separately. The fox was the most cunning, let alone being in a Yao's body. Li Jinglong feared that if there were scruples, it was impossible to say that they could abscond again, not to mention he had also lost Hung Jun's throwing knife. In that case, he would relentlessly give an order if necessary. A Tai and Chu Yongxi chased all the way along the roof. A Tai was already gasping for breath as he spoke, "Chu Ji, you go first. Let me relax for a moment." Chu Yongxi looked bewildered. "I'll accompany you. It's good that I won't catch Yao's." A Tai had no stratagem and had no choice but to run again reluctantly, saying, "How come this Zhenshi thinks so indecisively? I didn't say before that." Hey. Chu Yongxi reached out his hand and pulled A Tai to jump over the roof. "I actually think this young fellow Li is very clever. It's solely useless to think carefully. The plan will never catch up with the changes. It's better to make a move and throw down the dried corpses." The fox Yaos in the hall weren't in the least prepared and thus would surely show its tail. "The two of us have been searching for so long, didn't we find nothing? But in that case, firstly," A Tai gasped for breath and said, "it will just cause consequences. He's going to have a hard time in his life. Don't worry about eating salty radishes." Chu Yongxi smiled and said, "We can't say for sure, perhaps everybody else has long been planning." "I don't think so," A Tai said. "Ai, there it is. Hurry and chase." As soon as the brilliant rays of the throwing knife flashed, the two immediately continued to chase along the roof. The fox with the throwing knife in its shoulder staggered and stumbled as it escaped more and more slowly. Its escape route had dragged open a huge half of the circular sector along the East Market. That being the case, Origin and Hung Jun silently came round and already blocked its exit. They were only waiting for Li Jinglong to send out a signal and would then act immediately. As if sensing danger, the fox sniffed the air and halted. In a split second, Li Jinglong rushed to the scene and silently struck out his sword in the darkness. The fox suddenly whipped back as it roared and spurted smoke out of its mouth. Then, another arrow shot through the sky and broke into the mist. Looking on as it happened, the fox knew it couldn't escape and simply burst out a strong light and bellowed a woman's voice. "Shameless human! You've gone too far! Did I ever hinder you all? A murderer must pay with his life." Li Jinglong coldly said. "Is Chang'an the place where you can wreak havoc?" The fox suddenly thundered out of the mist. Its form then became as tall as one zhang, ejecting its sharp claws and advancing towards Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong immediately lifted his sword and blocked. The clang of metal instantly echoed as it overthrown in the ground. He never thought that the Fox Yao could become so immense. It seemed that this extremely daring Yaogwei had only tried to lead them in and that its real purpose was to kill them here. Origin's arrow flew over and nailed into the fox's shoulder. However, this Fox Yao was the one who had just set fire to the dried corpse in Yishilan. Its ability was extremely high. It certainly had no fear of Origin's 7-nailed arrows. Its eyes turned red as flames spurted out of its mouth. Just as it was about to burn Li Jinglong into a hard coke, Hung Jun rolled over as he rushed to cover the both of them and shook his penta-colored sacred light. In an instant, the flames recoiled and the Fox Yao burned its own face into a raging inferno, roaring in pain. As the flames doused, the Fox Yao knocked down the stalls in the silent, unmanned market. Li Jinglong effortlessly grabbed Hung Jun's hand and led him to avoid a collapsing stall. "Zhenshi." Origin came shortly. "I'll draw its attention away. Both of you take its heart." Li Jinglong dropped the words and then walked out from under the now collapsed stall. Hung Jun and Origin hid under a pile of rubble and looked out. With Origin's arrow and Hung Jun's throwing knife still lodged in its shoulder, the Fox Yao could hardly stand up, seemingly consuming all its strength. Fearing that it might shoot flames again, with his left hand enveloped the penta-colored sacred light, Hung Jun's right hand took his last throwing knife, ready to release it at any time. Origin patted Hung Jun in passing before he quietly walked away. The Fox Yao continuously gasped for breath as it looked straight at Li Jinglong. At that moment, Hung Jun felt extremely nervous. Li Jinglong didn't have the slightest amount of fear as he stepped forward while holding his sword and coldly said, "Evildoer, the exorcism department of the Great Tang has long withered over the last 50 years. Today, so long as this sword is here, Chang'an is not the place for you to indulge in." Li Jinglong pointed his sword at the Fox Yao. The throwing knife on its shoulder grew bright rays. The Fox Yao sneered. "Do you really think so yourself? Let me tell you, Chang'an is no longer the land of you humans. Wait and see." Origin had long been standing on the top of stake at the extremity of the east market while bending his bow and pulling apart the arrows. Hung Jun clutched his throwing knife, his palm covered with sweat. Li Jinglong was stumped for words after hearing what was said. Just then, the Fox Yao bared its sharp teeth and rushed towards Li Jinglong as its claws luminously glinted. Once caught, it would rip his belly open. Li Jinglong held his long sword and leapt backwards. Exactly at this time, the sound of horses' hooves approached. A group of soldiers from the Longwu army arrived, headed by a man who shouted, "Who's presumptuous, disturbing late at night?" Origin immediately put away his arrow, Hung Jun turned his head, and Li Jinglong continued to leap backwards. At that moment, the Fox Yao saw the opportunity, swinging its tail towards the Longwu army soldiers. Li Jinglong roared, "Run!" When the guards of the Longwu army saw this huge fox, they were all greatly shocked and thought they were in a dream. Before they could recover, the Fox Yao had already rushed towards their group. Li Jinglong shortly caught up and leaped along the Fox Yao's back and stabbed its nape with his sword. The horses neighed and scattered, and the guards of the Longwu army dropped to the ground. Li Jinglong roared again, "Run!" The guards rolled and crawled away. With a loud roar, as the Fox Yao got stabbed on its nape, it turned around and lifted Li Jinglong. Hung Jun tried to aim for it several times but couldn't make a move, as he feared that it would hurt Li Jinglong instead. Whenever the Fox Yao's claws were caught again, Hung Jun had to wait for a good moment before he could release the knife. However, he still couldn't ignore Li Jinglong's life. He was about to take the jade peacock plume that was around his waist, pour his spiritual power into it, and throw it on the ground. "Don't worry about me!" Li Jinglong exclaimed. His sword was stuck in the Fox Yao's nape and didn't have any weapon in his hand, thus he grabbed a long spear from the Longwu army. Li Jinglong was almost about to be ripped open when a peacock plume flew over and burst out divine light, blocking the Fox Yao's claws. Hung Jun shouted, "Hit!" The throwing knife then flew out in rotation. Li Jinglong leaned back. However, the Fox Yao had already made preparations. Knowing that Hung Jun was waiting for a sneak attack, the Fox Yao turned around and let the throwing knife plunge into its stomach before advancing towards Hung Jun. Li Jinglong immediately turned around and dashed to save him. Hung Jun fled and dodged as all his weapons had already scattered. If he was caught like this, he'd be seriously hurt. Li Jinglong threw his arms around Hung Jun and dragged him down. They slammed to the ground to avoid the Fox Yao's attacking body. The next moment, another giant creature appeared and howled, startling both of them. A giant grey wolf appeared in the market. That colossus was at least 1 person tall but was still much smaller than the Fox Yao. It leaped from the side roof and pounced on the Fox Yao, biting its neck as it dug its canine teeth deep. "What's this?" Hung Jun was astonished. "Take advantage of it now!" Li Jinglong exclaimed again. Hung Jun instantly regained his senses and then made a single strike with both hands. The 2 throwing knives dislodged and spurted out the Fox Yao's blood, spilling as far as the eyes can see, before then flying back to his hands. The Fox Yao flew over above them. Hung Jun held the throwing knives in each hand and released them together. Hit! The 2 throwing knives flickered as it mingled with cold ice and raging flames, streaking across a short distance. They brushed past Li Jinglong's face, cutting with it a few strands of hair, and went straight into the Fox Yao's heart as the cold ice burst forth and raging flames burned more. The Fox Yao's heart suddenly exploded into a charred blood hole, surrounded by ice crystals. It was still constantly struggling in mid-air, the red light in its eyes slowly fading before its body shrank rapidly. As the shua sounded, it turned into a little fox in the giant wolf's mouth. The 2 throwing knives, several arrows, and a sword clanged to the ground one after another. The giant wolf spat out the now small fox and quietly watched Hung Jun and Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong pulled Hung Jun to his feet. Hung Jun then asked, "Mo Rijin?" The giant wolf let out a woo sound and stretched up the corners of its mouth with its eyes seemingly smiling. The guards of the Longwu army stood up in shock. Li Jinglong motioned toward Hung Jun that the matter here would be discussed until later. They should go over and see the others first. "Officer Li!" Everyone greeted him one after another. Their expressions were distinctly different compared to that when Li Jinglong was still in the Longwu army. For a moment, their eyes held both shock and fear mixed with some admiration that could be clearly seen. Many of them were also his former subordinates. Li Jinglong inquired one by one and confirmed that no one was harmed. He looked back at Hung Jun and asked, "Where's the fish? Let them sniff some of the Lihun pollen." The Carpiao dragged the silk brocade over and said, "There's nothing left." Li Jinglong. "Ah! Yaogwai!" Everyone was once again terribly frightened. 3,200 taels of silver. Nothing left. Li Jinglong suddenly lost his intact image. The Carpiao hurriedly contended. "You all inhaled 3.5 taels last time. There is less than 8 taels worth of Lihun pollen left in the bag." Li Jinglong thought of it and had no choice but to drop the matter. Seeing Li Jinglong scolding a Yaogwai, everyone was completely in shock. "Don't tell anyone of what happened tonight, except Officer Hu," Li Jinglong told them. "I will go to the Longwu army tomorrow and personally report the matter. If there's still any noise later, inform our brothers to leave no one alone." They all nodded in succession. Li Jinglong didn't know whether the Lihun pollen would show results either. He would just have to take his bad luck for now and try to make up for it later. In that case. As the Longwu army left, Li Jinglong looked at Hung Jun and the giant wolf and said, "Let me see if there are any injuries." Both of them were fine. Hung Jun only got a scratch on his elbow when he fell to the ground. It was the first time that Hung Jun had fought so fiercely since he had come down the mountains, so it took a little while for him to recover. At this moment, fireballs suddenly rose in the distance. They immediately turned their heads. "Caught it," Li Jinglong said. "Go. You ride on my back," Mo Rijin, who transformed to a grey wolf, seeing Hung Jun's weariness, said. "I will take you there." Hung Jun climbed on the back of the wolf and they ran north, Li Jinglong following at a brisk pace behind them. "Mo Rijin?" Hung Jun asked in a low voice. The wolf stopped and slightly turned round. Hung Jun motioned for it to proceed and asked, "Are you a Yao?" "Probably." The wolf replied. "There hasn't been anyone in the grey wolf line who can change into a grey wolf for nearly 100 years. I don't know what I am either. Don't tell A Tai and the others." The wolf didn't seem to want Li Jinglong to hear too much. As they arrived in front of a courtyard, it leaped over the wall and hopped onto the roof. The dark clouds in Chang'an gradually opened as moonlight brightly shone. The wolf carried the young man, running wordlessly along the roof. "You're not going to stop me, are you?" The wolf abruptly spoke. Hung Jun smiled, leaned close to its ear, and said, "I'm also a half Yao." "Ah!" The wolf seemed utterly surprised, shook its ears, and said, "But I don't think you resemble one. My father is only—" "Hush," the wolf shushed him. "No need to say more. My father once said that there's not much difference between a Yao and a man, only good and evil." The wolf stopped and looked around. Seeing the bloodstains on the ground, they then took that as their path to follow. "Hung Jun," the wolf once again spoke. "Have you ever seen a shining white deer?" Hung Jun, "Ah." There were many deers on Taihang Mountains, but he had never seen a white one as the wolf had described. "The main reason I came to Chang'an was to find it," the wolf said. "If you know of a white deer's whereabouts, remember to tell me." After Mo Rijin turned to a grey wolf, on his back still was a leather strap carrying the quiver. It wasn't easy to ride on the wolf's back. Hung Jun almost slipped several times and was only able to hold onto the strap. The distant light flickered, already approaching the imperial city. The wolf let Hung Jun down as it stood up and changed back to Mo Rijin's human form. Hung Jun turned around to look for Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong somehow had gotten a horse, rode over, and took a shortcut to catch up with them. Coming. Chu Yongxi and A Tai stood outside a wall. Hung Jun asked, "What about my throwing knife?" A Tai faced him innocently while pointing inside. Chu Yongxi said, "We wounded it with a fireball and consequently, it jumped into the imperial palace." A Tai, "I wounded it with a fireball." Chu Ji, "You totally didn't do anything. So we dared not rush in," Chu Yongxi continued to explain. "Lest we cause trouble for Zhenqi again, I said we should wait for you all to come first." Li Jinglong arrived and got off the horse. After knowing that the fox had escaped into the imperial palace, he was immediately inundated. "You!" Li Jinglong was infuriated. "How can it escape?" "It hasn't escaped yet," A Tai said. "Should we go in and catch it for you? How can they find it in a place as vast as Xingqing Palace?" Li Jinglong frowned. He looked at A Tai and Chu Yongxi, who were smiling and seemingly had a tacit understanding between each other. At that moment, Li Jinglong realized their intentions and significantly nodded. The two foxes' reinforcements were possibly divided into two routes. One of them fled to the East Market, which might be their plan to lure the enemies. The other one fled to a place where there might be reinforcements, that is to say, the reinforcements were in Thepalas. A Tai and Chu Yongxi apparently didn't take drastic action and only tailed along the way to see where it was going. That is to say, Yaoguais are probably lurking within the imperial palace. However, Hung Jun's throwing knife was still nailed to the fox Yao. He promised to do something about it, so he must try to get it done. Li Jinglong turned countless thoughts in his mind when he suddenly caught a very subtle, distinct sound. Not a sound could be heard in the nighttime. Insects had already disappeared in late autumn, and Chang'an was almost 100 paces over and above before the wind rose. The sound was especially clear. The fox was hiding on the eaves of the back hall of Xingqing Palace, the throwing knife clinking as it touched the tiles. Hung Jun was about to speak when Li Jinglong made a shushing gesture. Holding his breath to listen, he heard another series of tiny sounds. It didn't go far but hit itself on the roof of the back hall and was pulling out your throwing knife, Li Jinglong said in a low voice. I heard it. It's no use. Chu Yongxi shook his head. Once we get close to it, it will only run away. This Fox Yao is too smart. If something happens in the palace, we will not be able to sort it out. Li Jinglong took the bow from his back. Everyone looked at him in surprise. My arrows are all ordinary weapons and incapable of killing a Yao. Li Jinglong said to Mo Rijin, lend me your arrows. Can you hit the target? Mo Rijin said in disbelief. Hung Jun played throwing knives since he was a child. Naturally, he knew of how hard it was. The four men heard nothing at all of what Li Jinglong had heard earlier. However, even if there were, Hung Jun would never be able to distinguish things by listening to the sound alone. I'll give it a try. Li Jinglong gently drew the longbow. He tilted his head and tried to distinguish the sound from 100 paces away. When he was young, his riding and shooting skills were 1 in 100. He often flaunted that he was the flying general, Li Guang. However, as time passed, he only received supercilious looks from people and didn't have the opportunity to go to the battlefield. In his daily life, he regarded performing shooting skills as a monkey show for dignitaries and nobles and was idly unwilling to put it to use himself. As time went by, his skill had long gone unmentioned. The Li clan's origins could not be proved by himself, who had become the laughingstock of Chang'an. At this moment, he was nervous enough that the hand drawing the bow was slightly trembling. On the top of the back hall of Xingqing Palace, the Fox Yao seemed to sense the danger and looked towards the boundless darkness behind the high walls before it raised its claws and receded. We should go back first, Hung Jun said in a low voice. We can find it, Zhenqi. I still have 2 here. It doesn't matter. Li Jinglong took a deep breath and drew the longbow once more. He looked sideways at Hung Jun and made eye contact with him. At that moment, the light sound of a tile collision came through his ears. In a split second, Li Jinglong decisively loosened the bowstring. An arrow flew out noiselessly, brushing through the blocking willows in the palace. With a clear sound, the withered leaves rose from the ground like meteors. The arrow flew past 100 paces away. The fox was silently hit in the abdomen, spurting blood. After a long absence of a mournful sound, Li Jinglong sighed wearily. When he looked back at Hung Jun, his eyes were filled with guilt. I haven't practiced for too long. My hands lacked skills. Li Jinglong frowned, eyes full of anxiety. He wanted to break the bow in 2. They were about to console Zhenqi that he had already done a good job tonight when a fox rolled down along the top of the hall. In addition to the sound of water from the pond in the back hall. Hit? Mo Rijin asked in surprise. Hit, Hung Jun said. I'll go in and look for it. Hung Jun immediately threw out the hook and climbed the courtyard wall. Everyone stared at Li Jinglong, speechless. Come out as soon as you find it. Li Jinglong ordered. A moment later, Hung Jun came out and threw the fox. They saw that it was hit through its right chest by the arrow and was already at its last gasp. Li Jinglong breathed a sigh of relief and with a smile said, I promised that I would get the throwing knife back. Li Jinglong had never smiled in front of everyone, but such a smile made the atmosphere a bit awkward. Everyone looked at each other. A Tai and Chu Yongxi were still unable to accept what happened this night and were struck dumb on the spot. You look good when you smile, Zhenqi, Hung Jun smiled and said. Don't always keep a straight face. Li Jinglong unnaturally coughed and coldly said, let's go back and discuss this later. They followed Li Jinglong back to the exorcism department. End chapter.